The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal and glowing screens. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their specific atmospheric needs. The morning session had been typical: trade disputes, territory negotiations, and the usual complaints about shipping routes through contested space. Ambassador Leo Chen sat in the Earth delegation's modest corner, reviewing his notes on grain export quotas. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 12 years, making them newcomers compared to civilizations that had been trading among the stars for millennia. Leo had learned to speak little and listen much during these sessions. Earth's voice carried weight in agricultural matters and conflict mediation, but they were still proving themselves in the larger cosmic community. The Vorthon representative was droning on about mineral rights when a clear, musical tone rang through the massive chamber. Every head turned toward the source of the sound. In the elevated section reserved for the most ancient civilizations, Queen Zara of the Christek Empire had risen from her crystalline throne. Leo had never seen her speak at council before. The Christek Empire held observer status, attending meetings but never participating in votes or discussions. Their technology was legendary: ships that could travel between stars in days instead of months, weapons that could disable entire fleets without destroying them, and healing devices that could cure diseases no other species could treat. Yet they remained neutral in all galactic affairs, watching but never interfering. Queen Zara stood nearly 3 meters tall, her skin shifting between silver and pale blue depending on the light. Intricate crystal formations grew from her shoulders and forehead, pulsing with soft inner light. Her people had evolved alongside the living crystals of their homeworld, creating a symbiosis that gave them abilities other species could barely comprehend. The hall fell completely silent. Even the automatic translation system seemed to pause, waiting for her words. "Honored representatives," Queen Zara began, her voice carrying clearly across the vast space without amplification. "I have observed your deliberations for many cycles. I have watched empires rise and fall, alliances form and crumble, wars begin and end. Today I wish to address one delegation directly." Leo felt his stomach tighten as her gaze swept across the assembled representatives. The weight of attention from dozens of alien species was uncomfortable enough during normal proceedings. Having the mysterious Christek Queen single someone out was unprecedented. "The human delegation," Queen Zara continued, her crystalline finger pointing directly at Leo's section, specifically Ambassador Leo Chen of Earth. Leo's fellow delegates turned to stare at him in surprise. Dr. Rodriguez, the head of their delegation, leaned over with wide eyes. "Did we miss something in the briefings?" she whispered. Queen Zara descended from her elevated platform with fluid grace, her crystal formations catching and reflecting the chamber's lights in hypnotic patterns. Other representatives shifted in their seats, some moving closer to get a better view, others retreating as if proximity to this moment might somehow involve them in whatever was about to unfold. "Ambassador Chen," Queen Zara said as she approached the human section, "your species has been part of this council for only a brief time, yet your actions have not gone unnoticed. The Christek Empire has maintained neutrality for over 3,000 years. We have chosen not to align with any faction, any alliance, any cause." Leo stood slowly, his mind racing through every interaction Earth had with other species, trying to identify what might have caught the attention of the galaxy's most enigmatic civilization. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "Earth is honored by your attention, though I confess uncertainty about what has earned it." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through Queen Zara's crystal formations. 2 years ago, the Kelhari and Threnodi were on the verge of war over the Nexus system. Both sides had valid claims, both had suffered losses, both were prepared to escalate beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. Yet somehow, a junior ambassador from a species barely known in this galaxy convinced them to not only cease hostilities, but to establish a joint colony that now serves as a model for cooperative development. Leo remembered that mission. It had taken 8 months of patient listening, of understanding not just the legal arguments but the cultural pride and historical pain driving both sides toward conflict. "The solution came from the Kelhari and Threnodi themselves, Your Majesty. I simply helped them find common ground." "Exactly," Queen Zara said, now standing only a few meters away. The entire council chamber watched in fascination. Last year, when the plague struck the Outer Rim colonies, most species offered technological solutions. Humanity sent not just medical supplies, but counselors, artists, teachers. You understood that healing required more than medicine. The Queen's crystals began to pulse with deeper, richer colors. Your species demonstrates something rare in this galaxy. Others speak of conquest through superior firepower or advanced intellect. But humans possess a different kind of strength. You have the power to truly understand others, to build connections across any barrier, to find solutions that benefit everyone involved. Leo glanced at his fellow delegates, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. Where was this leading? Queen Zara raised her voice so every representative could hear clearly. The Christek Empire faces a choice that will determine our future involvement in galactic affairs. For too long, we have remained isolated, believing that engagement would only bring the conflicts and divisions that plague the rest of the galaxy. But observing humanity has shown us that there might be another way. The chamber held its collective breath. Ambassador Chen, Queen Zara declared, her crystals now blazing with brilliant light. I challenge you to prove the power your species truly possesses. Demonstrate that humans can succeed where others have failed for millennia. Show me that your kind can bridge gaps that have seemed impossible to cross. Do this, and the Christek Empire will pledge its full alliance to humanity. The announcement hit the council chamber like a shockwave. Representatives began talking urgently among themselves in dozens of languages. The Christek Empire's technology and resources could shift the balance of power in the galaxy permanently. Several ambassadors stood, clearly preparing to voice objections or competing offers. But Leo only stared at Queen Zara, wondering what impossible task lay ahead and whether humanity was truly ready for such a momentous challenge. The council chamber erupted in chaos after Queen Zara's announcement. Representatives shouted questions in dozens of languages while their translation devices struggled to keep up. The Vorthan ambassador demanded to know why humans deserved such consideration. The Kelhari delegation insisted their species had equally valid claims to Christek partnership. Even the usually calm ethereal collective began transmitting rapid bursts of concern through their psychic networks. Leo stood frozen in the center of the commotion, still processing what had just happened. Dr. Rodriguez grabbed his arm, speaking rapidly in his ear about protocols and the need to contact Earth Command immediately. Around them, other human delegates gathered protectively, forming a barrier against the press of alien representatives trying to approach with offers, threats, and demands for explanation. Queen Zara remained perfectly still throughout the chaos, her crystal formations pulsing with steady, peaceful light. When she finally raised one hand, silence fell across the chamber with startling speed. The power she wielded was not political or military, but something deeper that commanded respect from every species present. The challenge will be private, she announced, her musical voice cutting through the tension. Ambassador Chen will have one solar day to prepare. Tomorrow, we will discover if humanity truly possesses the gift I believe they do. Before Leo could respond, Queen Zara turned and glided from the chamber, her crystalline robes trailing patterns of light. The massive doors sealed behind her with a soft harmonic chord that seemed to echo for longer than physics should have allowed. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of emergency briefings, hurried research, and increasingly desperate preparations. Earth Command transmitted every piece of available information about Christek's civilization, their technology, and their mysterious neutrality. Xenobiologists offered theories about crystalline consciousness. Military advisors suggested strategies for unknown challenges. Cultural experts provided warnings about diplomatic protocols when dealing with ancient civilizations. None of it helped Leo feel any more prepared when Queen Zara's personal transport arrived the following morning. The Christek vessel defied easy description. It appeared to be grown rather than built, its hull flowing in organic curves that shifted color like living opal. No visible engines propelled it through space, yet it moved with impossible grace and silence. The interior welcomed Leo with walls that glowed softly in response to his presence, corridors that seemed to adjust their proportions to make him comfortable, and an atmosphere that tasted of mountain air and distant rain. Queen Zara met him in what she called her contemplation chamber, a vast spherical room whose walls displayed the flowing lights of her homeworld's aurora. She had changed from her formal council robes into simpler garments that allowed her natural crystal formations to shine more freely. The effect was less intimidating but somehow more profound, like standing in the presence of a living work of art. "Are you ready to understand what I am truly asking of you?" she inquired, gesturing toward the chamber's center. Leo nodded, though he suspected nothing could have prepared him for what he saw next. Rising from the floor came the most complex structure he had ever witnessed. Thousands of crystal formations intertwined in impossible geometries, each one pulsing with different colors and frequencies. Some crystals were tiny as grains of sand, others massive as tree trunks. They moved constantly, rotating, extending, retracting, creating patterns that seemed to have meaning just beyond his comprehension. "This is the empathy engine," Queen Zara explained, her voice filled with reverence. "It was created by the architects, the civilization that came before us on our homeworld. We found it in the deep caverns when we first developed space travel. But for 3,000 years, no one has been able to activate it fully." Leo walked slowly around the structure, noting how it seemed to respond to his movement with subtle shifts in light and rhythm. "What is it supposed to do?" "We believe it was designed as a communication device," Queen Zara replied. "Not for transmitting words or images, but for sharing experiences, emotions, the deeper truths that exist beneath language. The architects left records suggesting it could allow complete understanding between any two forms of consciousness, no matter how different." "But it doesn't work?" Queen Zara's crystal formations dimmed slightly. "It responds to presence, as you can see. But every attempt to activate it has failed. The greatest minds in our civilization have tried. Brilliant scientists from other species have attempted to unlock its secrets during diplomatic visits. Logic, mathematics, advanced physics, quantum mechanics, neural interface technology. Nothing succeeds." Leo reached out tentatively toward one of the larger crystals, stopping just short of touching it. The entire structure seemed to lean toward his hand, colors brightening expectantly. "What happens when people try to solve it? They approach it as a puzzle to be conquered," Queen Zara explained. "They seek to understand its mechanisms, to force it into revealing its secrets through analysis and manipulation. But I have come to believe that the engine requires something different entirely, something that cannot be achieved through intellect alone." Leo felt a strange sensation as he studied the crystalline maze. The patterns seemed almost familiar, like music he had heard in dreams or mathematics that existed in the spaces between numbers. "You think it needs emotional intelligence. I think it needs what humans call empathy," Queen Zara confirmed. "The ability to understand and connect with another form of consciousness without trying to change it or control it. Your species has demonstrated this gift repeatedly. Where others see problems to solve or obstacles to overcome, humans see relationships to nurture and understanding to build." The empathy engine pulsed brighter as they spoke, as if responding to their conversation about its nature. Leo began to understand the magnitude of what Queen Zara was asking. This was not a test of human technology or scientific knowledge. It was a test of humanity's capacity for genuine connection across the vast differences that separated species among the stars. "How long do I have?" he asked. "As long as you need," Queen Zara replied. "But Ambassador Chen, you should know that if humanity succeeds where all others have failed, it will change everything. The engine holds secrets that could reshape how civilizations interact throughout the galaxy. The responsibility is considerable." Leo took a deep breath and stepped closer to the ancient device. The crystals responded with a harmony of colors that seemed to welcome him home. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that humanity's future among the stars would be decided not by their weapons or their technology, but by their ability to understand and connect with the vast universe of consciousness that surrounded them. The real challenge was about to begin. Leo stood before the empathy engine for several minutes, simply watching its rhythm. The thousands of crystals moved in patterns that seemed random at first glance, but gradually he began to notice deeper currents of connection. Some crystals pulsed in harmony with others across vast distances within the structure. Some moved in response to the movements around them. The entire device seemed alive, breathing with an intelligence he could almost understand. Queen Zara watched from a respectful distance as Leo circled the engine once more, his hands clasped behind his back. "Most who attempt this begin immediately," she observed. "They see it as a problem requiring immediate action." "But it's not a problem," Leo replied softly. "It's a conversation partner that nobody has learned how to listen to yet." He approached one of the smaller crystal formations at the base of the structure. Instead of reaching for it or examining its surface, He knelt down and placed his palm flat on the floor nearby. The crystal responded immediately, its light shifting from cool blue to warm amber. Other nearby crystals began to shift their colors as well, creating a spreading wave of warmer tones. "I think it's lonely," Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "All these years of people trying to force it to work, but nobody just sitting with it, trying to understand what it needs." Queen Zara's own crystal formations brightened with surprise. In 3 millennia, no one had suggested the engine might have emotional needs of its own. Leo remained still for another hour, occasionally moving his hand to different positions around the crystal cluster, learning its responses. The engine seemed to grow more relaxed with each passing minute, its movements becoming less erratic and more flowing. Colors began to cycle through warmer spectrums, and the harmonic frequencies it produced shifted to more pleasant tones. "Your Majesty," Leo said eventually, "would it be possible for some of my colleagues to join us? I think the engine might benefit from different perspectives working together." Within 2 hours, Dr. Maya Okafor and Captain Ben Torres had arrived aboard Queen Zara's vessel. Maya specialized in xenopsychology, studying how different species experienced emotions and formed connections. Ben commanded a deep space exploration ship and had spent years learning to read the subtle communications of nonverbal alien species. Maya approached the engine with the same careful observation that Leo had shown. "It's magnificent," she breathed, pulling out a small device to record harmonic patterns. The frequency variations suggest incredibly complex emotional states. It's not just responding to us, it's trying to communicate something specific. Ben walked around the structure with the measured pace of someone accustomed to evaluating unknown situations. His experience with first contact protocols had taught him to watch for patterns others might miss. "The way it moves reminds me of the crystal forests on Kepler 442b, he noted. Those formations would change their growth patterns based on the emotional state of nearby life forms. Queen Zara listened intently as the 3 humans discussed their observations. "You believe the engine has emotions of its own?" "Everything with this level of complexity develops some form of consciousness," Maya explained. "Even our artificial intelligences eventually develop preferences, moods, and what we can only call personality traits. Something this sophisticated, created by an advanced civilization and left active for millennia, would naturally evolve its own form of awareness." Leo placed both hands gently on a crystal formation, roughly the size of his head. The entire engine responded with a cascade of golden light that rippled outward from the point of contact. "I think it's been trying to tell us its story," he said. "Every time someone approaches it as a puzzle to solve, it tries to share its experiences instead. But when people become frustrated that it won't just work the way they expect, they give up before the conversation really begins." Ben approached a different section of the engine, his movements slow and deliberate. Years of working with nervous alien species had taught him the importance of non-threatening body language. "In my experience, consciousness wants to be acknowledged before it wants to be understood. Maybe we should introduce ourselves properly." The suggestion seemed unusual, but Leo nodded. He placed his hands flat against the crystal surface and spoke clearly. "Hello, my name is Leo. I'm here because Queen Zara believes my people might be able to understand you better than others have. We'd like to learn about you if you're willing to share." The engine's response was immediate and overwhelming. Light exploded through every crystal formation, patterns flowing faster than the eye could follow. Maya's recording devices struggled to capture the complexity of harmonics that filled the chamber. The very air seemed to vibrate with excitement and hope. "It's been waiting," Maya said in wonder, tears streaming down her face as waves of emotion radiated from the engine. "For so long, it's been waiting for someone to ask about its experiences instead of demanding it perform." Ben moved closer to another crystal cluster, speaking in the gentle tone he used with frightened alien children. "We're here to listen. Whatever you want to tell us, we have time." Images began to form in the crystals themselves, not projected onto their surfaces, but somehow existing within their very structure. Scenes of the architect's civilization flowed past, tall, graceful beings who lived in harmony with the crystal formations of their world. The engine showed them moments of joy, discovery, creation, and eventually, the great sadness of a species preparing for some inevitable departure. Queen Zara stood transfixed as the engine revealed memories her people had never been able to access. "The architects," she whispered. It's showing us the architects as they lived. Leo felt the engine's presence in his mind, not invasive or overwhelming, but like the gentle touch of an old friend sharing cherished memories. Through the connection, he began to understand that the engine was not just a communication device. It was a repository of everything the architects had learned about building, connections across the barriers that separated different forms of consciousness. The real revelation was just beginning. The empathy engine continued to share its memories, each crystal formation revealing different aspects of architect civilization. Leo, Maya, and Ben found themselves experiencing glimpses of a society built entirely around emotional harmony and mutual understanding. The architects had not conquered their world through technology or force, but by learning to communicate with every form of consciousness they encountered, from the smallest crystal organisms to the vast geological networks that spanned continents. They could speak with mountains, Maya whispered in amazement as images flowed through the crystals. They developed relationships with their planet itself. The engine pulsed with warmth at her understanding, then shifted to show more complex scenes. The architects had faced a crisis near the end of their civilization, not war or disaster, but a growing inability to connect with their own emotional heritage. As their society became more advanced, younger generations began to lose the empathetic abilities that had made their civilization possible. They were becoming too logical, Ben observed, watching crystal scenes of architect elders struggling to teach empathy to children who preferred computational solutions. Their success was destroying the very gift that made them successful. Queen Zara moved closer to the engine, her own crystal formations resonating with its frequencies. For the first time, Leo noticed that her natural crystals were responding to the engine's communications, creating a bridge between ancient architect technology and modern crystal biology. The engine recognized her presence and began sharing new images, scenes that Leo realized were not ancient memories, but current observations. The device had been watching crystal civilization develop for thousands of years, documenting their struggles with the same crisis that had faced the architects. Your people are losing their connection abilities too, Leo said gently to Queen Zara. That's why you've remained neutral for so long. You're afraid that getting involved with other civilizations will accelerate the loss. Queen Zara's crystals dimmed with sadness. Each generation of our people becomes more focused on technological solutions and political strategies. We still possess the ability to communicate with our crystalline partners, but the deeper empathic connections our ancestors enjoyed are fading. We fear that within a few more centuries we will become just another advanced species, no different from the conquest-minded civilizations that dominate the galaxy. The engine pulsed with understanding and began to reveal its true purpose. Through a complex flow of images and emotions, it showed them that the architects had created it not as a communication device for their own use, but as a teaching tool for future civilizations. They had programmed it with everything they had learned about building empathetic connections across species barriers. It's a teacher, Maya breathed, her recording devices capturing harmonic patterns of unprecedented complexity. The architects knew their civilization was ending, so they created this to pass their knowledge to whoever came after them. Leo felt the engine's excitement as Maya grasped its purpose. Through the crystal connections, he experienced the architect's hope that someday, another species would appear with the natural empathetic abilities needed to activate the engine and learn from their accumulated wisdom. But why hasn't it worked before? Ben asked. Surely other empathetic species have tried to activate it over the millennia. The engine responded with images of the many attempts Queen Zara had mentioned. Scientists approaching it as a puzzle to solve, diplomats trying to extract strategic advantages, even well-meaning researchers who viewed it as a tool to be mastered rather than a teacher to learn from. Each attempt had failed because the would-be users had focused on what the engine could do for them, not on what they could learn from it. Humans are different, Queen Zara said, her voice filled with wonder as she watched the engine respond to her guests. You don't approach relationships as transactions to be optimized. You seek understanding for its own sake. The engine began to share deeper teachings, showing the humans how the architects had learned to maintain emotional connections across vast differences in biology, psychology, and cultural development. The knowledge was not stored as data to be downloaded, but as experiential wisdom that had to be felt and understood through genuine empathetic connection. Leo found himself learning not just about alien communication, but about depths of empathy he had never imagined possible. The engine taught him to sense the emotional patterns of Queen Zara's crystalline biology, to understand the harmonics that carried meaning beyond words, to feel the subtle currents of consciousness that flowed through all living systems. Maya discovered techniques for bridging empathetic gaps between radically different forms of consciousness. The engine showed her methods the architects had used to establish emotional understanding with species so alien that they barely shared any common reference points for experience. Ben learned to recognize the emotional signatures that indicated readiness for deeper communication, the subtle signs that showed when a consciousness was willing to open itself to genuine connection rather than mere information exchange. Through it all, Queen Zara watched in fascination as her people's ancient mystery finally revealed its secrets. The engine had been waiting for a species that could approach it not as conquerors or users, but as students willing to learn about connection itself. "This is what my people need," she said softly, her crystals glowing with renewed hope. Not just the technology or the information, but the reminder of what true empathetic connection feels like. The engine could teach us to rediscover our own abilities before they disappear completely. The engine pulsed with agreement and joy, finally fulfilling the purpose for which the architects had created it. But Leo realized that this was only the beginning. The knowledge the engine contained could transform how all species in the galaxy related to each other, moving beyond the cycle of conquest and competition toward genuine cooperation and understanding. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for such a transformation, and whether humanity was prepared to guide others toward a new way of building relationships among the stars. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives took their seats for what many suspected would be a historic session. News of Queen Zara's mysterious test had spread throughout the diplomatic community, with rumors ranging from human failure to impossible success. The Christek Queen had remained silent for 3 days after Ambassador Leo's challenge, leaving the entire galaxy to speculate about the outcome. Leo sat with his human delegation, trying to project calm despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The knowledge he had gained from the empathy engine felt like a treasure too precious for words, yet he understood that sharing it properly would require careful consideration of how different species might react to such revelations. Dr. Maya and Captain Ben flanked him, both still processing their own transformative experiences with the ancient architect device. Maya had spent the past 2 days documenting harmonic patterns that could revolutionize xenopsychological research, while Ben had drafted reports that would fundamentally change first contact protocols for human exploration teams. The chamber fell silent as Queen Zara entered, her crystal formations glowing brighter than anyone had ever seen them. She moved with new purpose, no longer the distant observer who had watched galactic politics from afar for centuries. Her presence commanded attention in a way that felt different from her previous appearances. Warmer, more connected, more hopeful. "Honored representatives," Queen Zara began, her voice carrying clearly across the vast hall. 3 days ago, I issued a challenge to the human delegation. Today, I announce the results of that test and the decision it has led me to make. The Vorthan ambassador leaned forward eagerly, clearly expecting to hear of human failure that would open opportunities for his own species. The Kelhari delegation watched intently, remembering Leo's previous success in resolving their territorial disputes. Even the usually indifferent ethereal collective focused their psychic attention on the proceedings. "The challenge I presented was not one of technology or military might," Queen Zara continued. "It was a test of the quality that I believe will determine the future of civilized interaction in this galaxy, the ability to form genuine, empathetic connections across any barrier." She gestured toward the human delegation, her crystals pulsing with warmth. "Ambassador Leo Chen and his colleagues have succeeded beyond my highest expectations. They have accomplished something that eluded the greatest minds of 47 civilizations for over 3,000 years. They awakened the empathy engine." Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. The empathy engine was legend among the older civilizations, a mysterious architect artifact that no one had been able to activate despite centuries of attempts. Several representatives stood up demanding to know what the humans had discovered. Queen Zara raised her hand for silence. What they discovered will reshape how we understand communication between species. The engine was not a tool to be mastered, but a teacher waiting for students who could approach it with genuine openness and respect. The humans succeeded because they did not try to conquer or control it. Instead, they sought to understand it, to connect with it, to learn from it. Leo felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes as Queen Zara continued her announcement. The Christek Empire has remained neutral for millennia because we believe that engagement with galactic politics would only lead to the conflicts and competitions that have plagued civilization for generations. But humanity has shown us a different path, one where species can work together not through dominance or submission, but through genuine understanding and mutual respect. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives grasped the implications of her words. The Christek Empire commanded technology that could tip the balance of power in any direction. Their neutrality had been a stabilizing force precisely because no faction could claim their support. Therefore, Queen Zara announced, her voice cutting through the noise, the Christek Empire formally declares its alliance with humanity, but this will not be a traditional alliance based on mutual defense or shared interests. Instead, we propose something new, a partnership dedicated to teaching other species the empathetic communication methods we have learned from the architect legacy. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Several military-focused species immediately began calculating how this alliance would affect regional power balances. Others saw opportunities for technological cooperation, but a few of the older, wiser civilizations began to understand the deeper implications. We are not offering our technology as a tool of conquest, Queen Zara clarified, addressing the obvious concerns. We are offering our knowledge as a foundation for a new era of cooperation. The empathy engine has taught us that sustainable progress comes not from one species dominating others, but from all species learning to understand and support each other. Leo stood as Queen Zara gestured for him to speak. This partnership represents humanity's commitment to building bridges instead of walls, he said, his voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. We have learned that our greatest strength as a species is not our technology or our military capabilities, but our ability to form genuine connections with others who are different from us. Maya and Ben rose beside him, representing the scientific and exploration communities that would be crucial to implementing their new understanding. The knowledge we have gained will be shared freely with any species willing to approach it with open minds and peaceful intentions, Maya added. Over the following weeks, the alliance began to transform galactic diplomacy in ways no one had anticipated. Conflicts that had seemed intractable for centuries found resolution through new communication methods. Species that had never been able to establish meaningful contact discovered common ground through empathetic connection techniques. The Christek-Human Alliance became known, not as a military or political partnership, but as the foundation for what historians would later call the empathetic Renaissance, an era when civilizations learned to compete through cooperation rather than conquest, to grow stronger by helping others grow stronger, and to explore the galaxy not as individual species seeking advantage, but as a community of consciousness seeking understanding. Leo often returned to Queen Zara's ship to study with the empathy engine, learning new depths of connection that continued to surprise and inspire him. The ancient architect device hummed with satisfaction, finally fulfilling its creator's vision of a galaxy, united not by force, but by the simple recognition that all consciousness shared the fundamental desire to understand and be understood. Humanity had proven their power, not through dominance but through their greatest gift, the ability to build bridges of empathy across the vast spaces between hearts and minds throughout the cosmos.